He led them through the fields, one covered in lush grass, the other filled with springy green corn stalks, until they reached the river. It was broad and lazy here, flowing idly towards the gorge at the end of the moor. Riley and Bella opened their eyes wide when they saw the water.
"We don't have to swim across, do we?"
Bella hissed, fluffing up her orange fur. Ravenpaw thought for a moment. Firestar had described following the river all the way to the gorge. He had said nothing about crossing it. "No," he replied.
"Phew," puffed Bella.
They padded along the path that ran beside the river. It was broad and flat and full of the scent of two legs and dogs. Riley and Bella stopped to sniff every stalk, every paw print, every tiny trail. Even a leaf blowing in the breeze had to be pounced on and shredded.
"How's my pounce?"
Riley called, scraps of a beech leaf clinging to his muzzle. "Keep your weight on your hind legs right until you spring," Ravenpaw told him. "If you lean on your front paws, you'll put yourself off balance." Riley crouched down again, practicing. "But you'll wear yourself out if you don't stick to walking for a while," Ravenpaw added. He noticed Bella staring into a clump of reeds. "We'll hunt later, I promise," he told her.
"I'm not hunting. I'm watching that green stone with eyes."
Ravenpaw padded over to her. "Oh, that's a frog. Not good prey unless you're starving. Or in Shadow Clan."
"Ooh, we've heard about Shadow Clan," meowed Riley. "Tell us a story about them."
Ravenpaw sighed. "If it means you'll keep walking." Okay. He didn't want to frighten them with how vicious clan life could be. So he made up a story about Shadow Clan queens teaching their kids to jump like frogs. It kept Riley and Bella distracted for long enough that they covered a decent stretch before Ravenpaw realized it was sunhigh and time to rest. He sank down under the hedgerow at the side of a path and licked his haunches. His legs were aching, and his belly felt as though he had swallowed a stone. There was a loud scrabbling noise in the scrubby grass behind him. Ravenpaw turned to see Bella stepping proudly through the brittle stalks with a shrew in her jaws. She dropped it in front of him.
"Fresh kill!"
she declared with her tail curled high above her back. "Great catch!" Ravenpaw purred. There was a crack and a thud on the other side of the hedge, and Riley pushed his head through the branches. "Oops," he panted. "I was chasing a sparrow, but it got away." "Don't worry. Bella caught enough for all of us," Ravenpaw meowed. "And I'm not surprised the sparrow escaped. You sounded like a herd of cows thundering through the hedge." Riley scrambled through the hedge and rubbed his muzzle on his sister's head. He had to stretch up to reach her. "You're practically a warrior already," he meowed. "There's still a lot to learn," Ravenpaw warned. At that moment, a storm of barking sounded further along the river. Ravenpaw sprang up, his fur bristling. "We're used to dogs," Riley boasted. "There was a fluffy white one in the garden next to ours. Bill and I used to scratch its nose whenever it looked under the fence." Huge paws thundered along the path towards them, and Riley's eyes grew huge. "But it wasn't as big as this dog," he yelled. He leaped into the hedge as if he had grown wings. Bella followed, and Ravenpaw scrambled after them, giving Bella's rump a shove with his nose to boost her into the higher branches. They clung to the swaying twigs and looked down at a massive brown beast, which was snuffling up the remains of the shrew. When it finished, it looked up, its long pink tongue lolling, its hot breath stinking of prey.
"Is it gonna eat us next?" Bella whimpered.
"Let's hope not," Ravenpaw muttered. He sank his claws into the branch and tried to wiggle deeper into the hedge. A two-leg bellowed close by, making all of the cats jump. The dog looked around, and then its ears drooped and it trotted away. Ravenpaw let out a long breath. That was way too close. He waited until the sound of paw steps had faded, and then slid down to the ground. Riley landed behind him, and Bella stayed where she was, clinging to the branch at the top of the hedge. "Come on, Bella," Ravenpaw meowed. "It's safe now."
"And what if that dog comes back?" Bella squeaked.
"It won't," Ravenpaw replied.
"You don't know that."
"Well, not for sure, but I can't see it along the riverbank, and I can't hear it anymore. We're going in the opposite direction, so we have time to get away."
"I'm scared," Bella mewed in a tiny voice. "I want my mother."
Riley crumpled a dead leaf under his paw. "Maybe this wasn't such a good idea," he mumbled. For a moment, Ravenpaw wanted to agree with him. Then he remembered Silverstream, telling him that he was these cats' only chance of choosing their own path. "All warriors get scared sometimes," he told them. "It's the only way to tell if you're being brave. You kept yourself safe from that dog, didn't you? You did well. Both of you. Violet would be very proud of you. But we need to keep going before that dog comes back." Above his head there was a faint whimper. Ravenpaw looked up. You can't stay up there forever, Bella. A hedge is no place for a cat, kitty pet, or warrior.
Do you promise that dog won't get me? Bella mewed.
I promise. There was a crackle of twigs and a few tumbling leaves. Then Bella squeezed out from the bottom of the hedge. Her fur was full of scraps and her eyes were wide with fear. Ravenpaw licked the top of her head. Well done. You're doing great. He padded onto the path and looked up and down. There was no trace of life, two-leg or dog, in either direction. Let's go, he called, and set off at a trot. Riley and Bella fell in behind him. Ravenpaw tried not to show that the incident with the dog had rattled him too. They had to dodge a few more two-legs and dogs as they traveled on, but it was easy to spot them from a long way off and hide in the hedgerow. Bella was unusually quiet, and Riley stayed close to her, giving her encouraging licks. When it started to get too dark to see the edge of the riverbank, Ravenpaw looked for a place to spend the night. He found a squat, angular, gray stone den at the edge of the field, just on the other side of the hedge. The floor was damp earth and it smelled sharply of cows, but there was no other animals in the field and no sense of foxes or badgers. Ravenpaw led Riley and Bella into the den and waited while they lay down. They looked exhausted, their flanks heaving and their pelts were dusty and matted. Stay here and clean yourselves, Ravenpaw told them before hauling his weary legs outside and heading for the hedgerow. He found a nest of eggs halfway along the field and carried them one at a time under his chin to his companions. Bella made a face at the slimy texture of the eggs, but Riley ate more enthusiastically. I'm so hungry I could eat grass! Ravenpaw clawed some moss from a log that lay at the entrance to the den and shaped it into a nest for all of them. Riley and Bella curled up together in a pool of gray and orange fur and fell asleep at once. Ravenpaw lay down beside them, feeling the warmth of their fur against his belly. Moonlight filtered through a small hole in the wall of the den, and Ravenpaw twisted around to look up at the glowing orb. Is Barley looking up at the moon too? He wondered. They'd hardly spent a night apart since he'd first come to the barn. But, in spite of his sadness, exhaustion dragged Ravenpaw into sleep.